Hey man, I'm Jusko from ProbableMoney.com. In this video, I'm going to share with you my credit card limits, not literally share them with you. You don't get to use them. I am only going to tell you about them, what my total credit limit is, who's given me the most, who's given me the least, all of those kind of things. People are always interested when it comes to people like myself that talk about credit cards a lot on YouTube, like what cards to use, what are their credit limits, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to do some sharing and caring in this video. So it's been a while since I've done this exercise. It's been about 3 years to be exact. And when I last did a video looking at my overall credit card credit limits across all my cards, I was a little bit over 162,000 across all of them. Now, 3 years later, I'm a little over $224,000 in total credit limits across all my cards. Plus, I have the American Express Platinum card, which does not have a preset spending limit, although it does sort of have a spending cap, which we'll talk about. That $224,000 in total available credit is spread across 17 credit cards, 15 of which I would consider to be traditional bank cards, 2 of which I would consider to be traditional retail store cards that are not MasterCard or Visa cards. So if we look on average, that means that if we're looking at all of those cards, a little over $13,000 credit limit per card on average. If we are looking at only the bank cards, a little over $14,000 per card. 4 of those cards have limits over $20,000. Another 6 cards have limits between $10,000 and $20,000. And then of course there is the American Express Platinum card, which is sort of in its own category. There are 10 different card issuers that I have credit cards with. So it's spread across not only a lot of cards, but a lot of issuers. So looking at those issuers, who is giving me what? Well, Chase is giving me the most in overall credit limits with over $52,000 of limits spread over 3 cards. Capital One over $40,000 spread over 2 cards. Citibank about $31,000 over 3 cards. Wells Fargo another $30,000 with a couple cards. American Express $26,000 with 2 cards, and then of course the American Express Platinum is going to be on top of that. And then I've got the AAA card from Comenity, which is giving me $22,000, which seems like an awful lot. Apple Card $9,000, Synchrony Bank giving me $7,000. That's on the Verizon Visa. Only $3,600 from Discover, and they never give me any more because I think they don't like that I don't use the card enough. And then TD Bank another $2,200. That is on the Target credit card. Now I didn't include the American Express Platinum in those calculations, so that would actually be an 18th credit card, but I didn't include it because of the fact that it does not have a preset spending limit, which means American Express sort of wants you to feel like you could spend anything you want to on the card, but there is sort of a soft cap, and when you actually are an American Express Platinum customer, you can go online and you'll see there is a tool where you can check your spending power. And when you go to that tool, they don't say, hey, here's what your spending power is. Instead, they say, well, how much are you thinking about spending? And then they tell you if you would be approved to spend that much or not. So I went and used that tool and I said, well, let's start with $20,000 and see if, that would be what they would allow me. I figured they probably would, and they did. And then there was a little link that said, hey, try a higher number. And I'm like, awesome, that's exactly what I'm here for. So I tried $40,000. And they said yes to that as well. And then I got a little nervous, like I don't want to keep putting higher and higher numbers in there, or sooner or later American Express is going to be like, what's this guy doing? Is he about to make a $100,000 purchase? And we don't know what that is. So I stopped, but I have at least $40,000 that I could put on that American Express card, or at least what you would think of as a credit limit. So if we added that Platinum card to the other American Express cards I have, it would actually be an American Express that was giving me the most out of anyone. And then my overall credit limits would be up over $260,000 and possibly even higher. Now, if I put all those credit cards in my wallet and hit the streets determined to buy $260,000 worth of goods and services, do you think the credit card companies would let me do it? I don't think so. As soon as I maxed out a couple cards, then the alarm bells would go off, especially if I maxed out a card from one of the issuers where I have multiple credit cards. If I took one of my Chase cards and I ran it up to $15,000, they would lock all my cards down, at least until they could find out what was going on. So I might have $52,000 worth of spending power with Chase, but if I suddenly hit $15,000 of it, even though that's less than 30%, Chase is going to want to talk talk to me before they're going to let me use any more of it. If I have a good explanation, maybe they'll unlock it and then let me continue to use the cards. But even then, if I then ran up a second card, probably Chase is going to lock me down and say, we don't trust that explanation that we got earlier. So it's very difficult to really use all your credit limits, at least once you get into these crazy 200,000 plus numbers. And there are multiple concerns from the credit card companies. Number one is what I sort of just alluded to. Why are you suddenly spending so much on your credit card when that has not been your pattern? Has something changed in your life? Did you lose your job and now you're buying on credit because of it? Or is there some other reason going on? Number two is going to be fraud. Does somebody else have your credit card number and they are buying as much as they can with those credit cards until they do get shut down? And then number three is going to be sort of a mix of the two. It would be fraud that you are the one actually committing, where you have over time, and this does happen, sometimes people will have a long-term criminal strategy where they will get a lot of credit cards, get those credit limits up pretty high, and then all of a sudden, after showing no pattern, they will run them all the way up to the limits, buy as much as they can, and then they will skip town and will not be found anymore at their last known address, and it will be very difficult for the credit card companies to track them down. So as soon as those charges start going up, the credit card companies think, we might have a skip and run here. And so the logical next question is, why give me such high credit limits if I'm not actually allowed to use them? And the answer is that the credit card companies want you to feel like you have a lot of spending power, even if they don't necessarily want you using it all the time, or if they don't want to see you suddenly go from spending very little to suddenly spending a lot without them having confidence that you can pay it back. But they want you to feel like, yeah, I could go out there and buy a refrigerator and a stove and whatever and stick it all on this card, and I wouldn't have to worry about whether I'm going to hit the credit limit. And if I have a credit card that has a $2,000 or $3,000 limit, I know, well, I might start bumping up against the top of that limit, so I'm not going to use that card. But if I have another card that's got a $30,000 credit limit, well, then I don't have to worry about it. I'm not going to go anywhere near that credit limit, but I know it's really high, so I know I can spend without having to think too hard about that limit being something that's going to come into play. So it's really a little bit of a mental game to make you feel like you have a lot of spending power, but that doesn't necessarily mean they want you using all of it, especially on a regular basis. Now, if you go on some of the credit discussion boards, you will see that for some people, getting their credit limits higher and higher is sort of a sport. I don't really think that that's a smart thing to do, especially when you are newer in your sort of credit history, because it makes it look like you are desperate for credit. I don't think I've ever asked for a credit limit increase on any of my cards. I just have a very long track record with credit in general. So I'm not working on 2 years, I'm working on 2 decades. So all those credit limits that I have, some have come from credit increases. Probably more often they have come from getting new credit cards that, based on my past credit history, they've given me very high limits right off the bat. So yeah, asking for a credit limit increase sometimes, if you feel like you need it, or you feel like you've got a very low limit and you would like to make a few more purchases and you have been good about your payments, making them on time, it makes sense to ask for a credit limit increase sometimes. But I don't think it's something to really make a habit of, because I think over time the credit card companies start to look at someone doing that and think, why are you doing this? Why do you want all that credit? And then maybe when you want credit in the future, all of a sudden you might find out that you can't get something you want because you have worked so hard to get these humongous credit lines, and maybe they don't feel justified from the credit card companies after a certain point, especially when compared to your income. All right, so that is my open kimono, which I've always thought is a very strange phrase. No one wants to see that. But anyway, that is my open kimono credit limit information to share with you. If you want to share your own in the comments below, or if you have any other questions or comments, I would love to hear those as well right down there. Otherwise, I thank you for watching. And as always, please go to proudmoney.com, where we do credit card reviews. We talk personal finance. We talk deals and all sorts of other fun stuff too. If you're not going to leave a comment, or you're not going to go to the website, the next video for you to watch, you know it's right there.